Well, welcome everyone to day 2 of review specific. Today we're doing unit 3. Unit 3 deals with all of your costs, your cost curves, how to figure out your marginal cost, things of that nature. I'd like to say a couple shout outs to Dan Guller out there in Illinois and Will Yu down in Atlanta. Love the emails, love the DMs. Thank you, and you guys are going to kill it. Well done. All right, so today we're going to get started. We have 7 free response. You have 2 options while watching this today. You can either watch it live and go through and do this with me, or you can, and I shouldn't say this because I won't watch it live, but if you want to wait and then pause each time I do a free response, do it and then go over it, whatever suits you. If right now you feel like, these cost curves in perfect competition, I have down pretty well, then sit tight, we'll do these together. And anytime you come up with something that I might say and you're like, whoa, I don't remember that, just make a note of it and you can go back over it, okay? So here we go. Let's get Boogie in here today. No reason to, there we go. All righty. So here we are once again. Welcome. Mr. Pedlow up in Chelsea, Michigan. And unit 3, and first one we're going to do is a simple example of cost curves. I don't think you're going to see anything this easy May 20th. If you do, well done for you. So identify the cost curves, right? This is once again knowing the shapes of the cost curves, what the shapes mean. So identify curve 1. Obviously, if you look up, that is in fact going to be your marginal cost. And curve 2, right, is going to be average total cost. Once again, notice your marginal cost going right through the bottom of that. And then curve 3 would be your, so curve 1, marginal cost, curve 2, average total cost, curve 3, average variable cost. And then before we can even answer this, they're going to ask about the shape of the marginal cost curve, and then notice how these are getting closer together. So we've gone through this stuff. If you get a question like this and you're looking at it and you're like, what are some things they can ask you? That should jump off the page right away. So B, explain why curve 1 initially decreases. Okay. When I showed you guys this before, what I said was a lot of times it's easier just to skip B1, go back to it and answer B2, because we know why it finally increases. And the reason for that is diminishing marginal returns. I just was watching a show and a guy was talking about taking vitamins. Literally, this is 10 minutes ago. And he said that you can take too many vitamins. He said, look, if you take, 1,000 times how much vitamin D you're supposed to take, it's just diminishing returns. And I thought, not bad. So we know that's why your cost curves go up, right? So why do they initially decrease? Well, if they increase because of diminishing marginal returns, then they fall because of increasing marginal returns. So B1, why does the marginal cost curve fall? Increasing marginal returns, right? Each worker makes more than the previous worker did. And eventually that stops happening. So when they stop doing that, right? Remember, this is a mirror image of your marginal product curve. And so what happens is as they slow down, so I hire the second worker, they make me 6 more. I hire the third worker, they make me 10 more. And then I hire the fourth worker, they may make me like 7 more, right? So I went from 10 to 7. So in essence, it's getting more expensive. My additional cost to hire workers is increasing because they're making me less. See? What measure of cost is represented by the vertical distance between curve 2 and 3, and that would be average fixed cost. That's why they're getting close together. So on D, they're going to ask, why is that? And the easiest way to say it is because your fixed cost, not average, your fixed costs are being spread over a larger quantity. So if I'm making Michigan Econ t-shirts and I have to do all this stuff, right? Each t-shirt would cost like $10,000. I do not know how to do this, but if I make 1 million of these at the margin, right, they keep coming off. So my average cost just keeps getting lower and lower and lower because my fixed cost, the factory, the machines and all that, I'm spreading over a larger quantity of shirts. And then E, using the letters, identify 2 points. So remember, okay, we don't have a demand curve right now. They didn't give us a price on here, or we have a bunch of theoretical demand curves, but they didn't tell us what the price is. So we know our supply curve is your marginal cost curve. In the short run, it's your marginal cost curve above average variable cost. So if you're supplying the good here and you look at this price and you say, but my cost is higher, yes, in the short run, you can lose money. We've talked a lot about that. So K and L, if they had asked, however, if this question said, what are letters on the Long run supply curve, it would just be L, because you cannot continue losing money in the long run. See JCPenney, for example. Okay, that'd be a relevant example. All righty, one down, 6 more. You know what I'm going to say. Anytime you have a total column, let's get a marginal column next to it. Okay, so you look at, why even try and figure this out? Why not just make the column? Because now A, you're going to have to do it. So here we go. There's my marginal product column. From 0 to 6 is 6, from 6 to 14 is 8, and then 10, and hopefully I did the math correctly. So A, calculate the marginal product of the 6 worker, and the answer is 3. And believe it or not, you would write down, because 42 minus 39 equals 3. That is showing your work on this, totally fine. And then B, does the production function exhibit diminishing returns to labor? So I hire the first worker, they make me 6 more. Hire the second, they make me 8. Hire the third, they make me 10. That's increasing marginal returns. However, when I hire the 4th worker, they only make me 8, right? And then the 5th worker only makes me 7, 6th worker only makes me 3. So you know what your marginal product curve would look like. So does it exhibit this? Yes, and explain, and you could say, because after the 3rd worker, each additional worker makes less than the previous worker. And then C, when marginal product is falling, what happens to marginal cost? So they accepted a couple different answers on this. It's increasing, we know that. Why? You could say either because if marginal product is falling, marginal cost must be increasing, or because they're mirror images of each other, right? But if I was a reader, if I designed this, I would expect you to get a little more detailed by saying something like, you know, if my marginal product, then each additional worker makes less, so it's driving up my additional cost for each additional worker type thing. And then D, using a single correctly labeled graph, draw the firm's short run average total, average variable, and marginal cost. And you know what? Instead of doing this, why don't we just do that? It's got to look just like that. Okay. No, you wouldn't have letters on there. Key. Once again, make sure your marginal cost goes right through the bottom, and make sure your average variable gets closer to your average total, right? Big gap over here, smaller gap over there. Look at this. 2 down. So hopefully, if you guys are pausing these and doing them, hopefully you guys are doing well in this. The next one, once again, a total column. Let's get our marginal column. Now, if you say, you know, I haven't studied marginal variable cost. No, you haven't. But if your fixed cost is $240, and that's a fixed cost, hence the name, then at the margin, right, you can make your marginal column, your marginal cost column directly off this. So just go ahead and do it. Because if you added 240 to all of these numbers, the marginal cost stays the same, right? So you don't have to worry about that. So go ahead and make your marginal cost column. And once you do that, then you can start answering the questions. So once again, right, from 120 to 145 is 25, and then 145, blah, blah, right? You got all these. So A, calculate the average total cost of producing 6 trumpets. Okay, typically, like on the last one we just did, what did they ask? They asked you to find the marginal cost. So now they're throwing a little bit different loop here, a little bit different wrinkle. This is Michael Brody's trumpet manufacturing plant from San Francisco. So calculate the average total cost of producing 6 trumpets. So we know that your average variable plus average fixed equals average total, okay? So how do we get that? Well, there's an easy way to do this. To get your average total cost, it's total cost divided by quantity, right? That's how you get an average. You guys know that. So variable cost is $120. Fixed cost is $240. So 120 plus 240 equals $360. That is now our total cost if you make 6 trumpets. So to get the average, you just divide by the quantity. So 360 divided by 6 equals $60. That's your average total cost, right? You're just adding, your variable plus your fixed and dividing by the quantity. Easy enough. B, now that you have this already, this table already done, you can answer B, calculate the marginal cost of producing the 11th trumpet. It's $100. You went from 290 to 390. C, what is Brody's profit maximizing quantity? Use marginal analysis to explain. Okay, so some of you might be thinking, well, we know our marginal cost, and profit maximizing is always where MC equals MR. Did they give us the marginal revenue? Well, let's think about this for a minute. In a perfectly competitive firm, Mr. Dart, price equals marginal revenue equals demand equals average revenue, right? We know those all equal each other. They've given you the price. It's $60 per trumpet, which means that's also your marginal revenue. Each time you sell a trumpet, right? They could ask on here, what kind of firm is this, right? I know they already gave you a perfectly competitive. How do you know? Because they're price takers. They told you the price is $60. So think about this. Brody sells trumpet and his marginal revenue, he gets, when he sells the 7th trumpet, he earns $60. It cost him $25. Is that good? I dare say that's good. If he sells the 8th trumpet, if the margin only costs him 60, he's making an additional, or excuse me, it only cost him 20, he's making an additional 60, that's good. He sells a 9th trumpet, now his marginal costs are going up, additional 55, but he makes an additional 60, so far so good. If he decides to sell the 10th trumpet, it at the margin is going to cost him $70, and he's only going to make 60. Probably not a great idea. So his quantity is going to be 9. And when you see questions that say things like use marginal analysis, right? You just have to use the word marginal. What you'd say is if the 9th trumpet, the marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost, because 60 is greater than 55, but in the 10th trumpet, the marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue. So Brody would not produce a 10th trumpet. Easy stuff. And then E, Brody also produces saxophones at a loss in a perfectly competitive market. Draw a correctly labeled graph of Brody's firm showing the market price at $200 and his quantity of saxophones. Okay, so let's do this. Let's draw this one together so you guys get used to, I know you're not going to draw these, but it's very important you understand how you could draw these. So if they're drawn, you understand what it means. So they said, right? I think it said the price is 200, right? So that's your demand equals marginal revenue equals average revenue, marginal cost. Okay. And let's see here. It did say at the price of $200, he produces saxophones. So it's quantity. And so you can make your dotted lines down. Right, here's your quantity line. And then remember, if it's at a loss, that's what's key here, okay, is the fact that Brody's losing money. So what does that mean? Well, that simply means, right, that his average total cost is going to be above. Make sure the bottom goes through of marginal cost, goes through the very bottom of average total cost. And once again, you'll stay on this line, you'll make your dotted lines up and over. And does it say shaded? It does, says completely shaded actually. So how does this help you on May 20th? Well, if you saw that graph right there and they said to you, right, and maybe you have a 9 here, right, because we said the quantity was going to be 9, and they said to you, what is exhibited in this graph? Well, that's where you guys, you know, once you realize how to draw all this stuff, you could say there's a firm that is at a loss. In all honesty, what curve should you also have on here if you want to be really good? And it is your average variable cost curve. And why is that? Because you want to show them that Brody is still operating. Okay. Now, would you have to? Well, if they don't have it on there and they're saying that Brody is still operating, then obviously you don't need it. But what I'm saying is if you see this graph on here, you can make a couple assumptions immediately looking at this, that the price is greater than average variable cost, so you're staying open, but price is less than average total cost, so you're at a loss. I mean, these are all those things that you guys at this point, right, when you look at these graphs, should kind of have a good handle on. Okay, so that is how you do that one. So we're about halfway through unit 3. Hopefully your brains aren't hurting right now. And we'll go back to another free response. Okay, once again, so if you say, why are we doing all these? Because the questions are different, and I want to go through as many of these as possible so there's no surprises for you guys at all. So on May, you're like, saw it all. All right, so here we go. Table above, what is the dollar value of the total fixed cost? Okay, this is a great question. So if they give you the total cost, nowhere on here does it say. So all it says is the table above gives the cost function, the short-run total cost function for a firm in a perfectly competitive industry. Okay, so you know the price takers. And they didn't give you the variable or fixed. So that's something a lot of kids struggle with, like, how do we know exactly what? Let me make sure you guys are on this page. I just want to make sure you should be, because if not, there we go. That probably looks better for you guys. All right, there we go. So table above gives you the short run cost function. What is the dollar value of the firm's total fixed cost? So as I was saying, sorry about that. So as I was saying, the fixed cost, there's an easy way to think about this. If you're not producing anything at all, right, what are your variable costs? Well, let's go back to what we talked about. If they ever ask for an example of variable cost, it's things like your utility bill, right? Your electricity bill. One reason that this is a great, gosh, econ is so great to study. There's an article in the paper the other day of why the global emissions like carbon dioxide aren't down as much. I mean, think about it. We're not driving much. We're not flying much, right? There's not a lot of transportation going on. And it's because, think about our electricity bill. Think how much more TV is being watched. When people would normally be at school and work, now the TV might be on all day. Where people might set their thermostat lower, especially up north, and then have the heat kick on, or the AC if you're in Phoenix right now at 104, then maybe it's on all day because people are home. So things of that nature, those are variable cost. Your wages, if I'm not producing anything at all, am I paying wages? No, right? My variable costs are, so what does this mean? It means if I'm not even open, all of my costs are in fact fixed cost. That's a really good question for you guys to understand if it were on there, is they love asking that. What are your fixed costs? Well, you just go to zero production. Oh, so now I know if my fixed costs are 20, then I also know my variable cost. It would just be whatever my total cost is minus 20 each time. So if they ever ask, like, what is the average variable cost for this, you could figure that out, okay? So what is the dollar value? $20. B, calculate the marginal cost of the first unit. Well, you went from 20 to 27, so we can all do that math. 27 minus 20, right? So that's $7. C, if the price the firm receives for a product is $20, indicate the profit maximizing quantity of output. Once again, make a marginal column. It makes your life so much easier. So they're going to sell the product for $20. So the easy way I do this in my room when I teach, back when we have, whiteboards behind us and on projectors and everything else, is you sit there and say, right, if I could sell it for 20, it only cost an additional 7. Yes, 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 no, right? And I have students, especially some of you are my students who are watching are probably like, yeah, we've heard this before. But yes, I would always sell something for $20 if at the margin it only cost me an additional 7. And so you go down, the fourth, whatever we're selling here, it doesn't say, cost me 18 and I'm selling it for 20. Fifth cost me 23 and I'm making 20. That would be bad. So the answer is 4. Now, if you are very math brained and you're saying that's actually not technically true. Okay, so for those of you who like the answer 4, just do this for a sec. But if you said between 4 and 5, you're not wrong. That's between 4 and 5 is exactly where your marginal revenue equals your marginal cost. It's okay, however, on here if you say at 4, and it makes it easier if you have to do math afterwards. Okay, if they ask about things like profit, it makes it much easier, but that's okay. And then D, what will happen to the number of firms in the industry? So once again, if you said 4, right, then are you making profit? So if I'm selling it for 20, that's my additional revenue, my marginal revenue. My marginal cost is 18. That means every time I sell it, I'm getting an additional $2 in profit. So I am earning economic profit. So what's going to happen to the number of firms? They're going to increase because firms are going to enter the market. You would say due to the existence of profit. So anytime there's profit there, right? And the other way, to look at this is I'm selling them for $20 each, right? So 4 times 20 is $80, and my total cost is only 72. So I'm making $8 in profit if I sell 4 of them, right? $2 each, what we just said. And then E, if they operate in a constant cost industry and they've reached long-run equilibrium and they put a per unit tax, what's going to put output? Now, they didn't say in the short run. They said in the long run. In the short run, it's going to drive up your marginal cost, but in the long run, price, marginal cost, and average total cost are all going to increase by $2, so there would be no change in output. Everything's shifting up exactly by $2, so your output stays the exact same. A little more detail, a little more tricky of a point, but the rest of these, you guys should feel pretty good about these. I'm going to move on now from these cost functions where you can just do the marginal cost and start answering the questions. And then tomorrow, on Friday, when we do the labor, we'll look back at some of these, and now you can figure out how many workers should they employ. So you'd have to get a marginal product and then a marginal revenue product column. And for those of you who are like, man, May 20th, I'm never going to hear about marginal product again. A opinion guy in the Wall Street Journal today talked about the media and said that when some of them show up to work in the press, they actually have negative marginal product, that they would do better for the readers if they in fact didn't show up for work. And I thought that is such a good economic analysis. Whether you agree or disagree, I don't care. I don't have any opinion on it, but it's all econ, right? Negative marginal product. I love it. All right, so here we go. Now we're going to actually do a little drawing, because we're going to start talking about perfect competition. So yes, there's going to be one more little cost function here. Easy enough. Okay, we got it. But this time it says they already did the marginal cost for us. And so if you have something to draw with, that would be very handy for this one. So Jasmine is a typical firm that produces, sells t-shirts in a perfectly competitive constant cost. Remember, constant cost industry means as firms enter the market, it doesn't, or exit, it doesn't change your overall cost. Okay. The market is currently in long-run equilibrium. The price is $5 and Jasmine's marginal cost is listed. Okay. So what is her quantity of output? So, right, you're just going to look down here and say, if she's selling it for $5 and her marginal revenue is $5 because it's perfectly competitive, then she wants to go where MC, which is your column right here, equals marginal revenue. And that's at a quantity of 4. So 4, and the explanation point would be where MC equals MR. And I will say that often when I'm teaching, I'll have kids raise their hands and say, wait a minute, on the AP test, is it really going to be this easy, a question like that? And I always say to them, this is an AP test. You are taking questions kids in the past have taken. Can it be this easy? Yes, it can. You guys, because you have limited time this year with only 45 minutes and your 2 questions, will it be this easy? I don't know. Maybe A is, maybe B gets more difficult, maybe C is even more difficult, but it can be. Don't overthink economics. Marginal cost equals marginal revenue. It can be that easy. B, draw a correctly labeled graph for Jasmine and show how her total revenues, shaded completely. I'm going to do that in just a second for you. And then C says, now assume consumer demand for t-shirts increases. What happens to the number of firms in the long run? So let's answer these 2 questions by looking at how we're going to draw this. Okay, so it says, correctly labeled graph for Jasmine, show our total revenue at the profit maximizing quantity. Well, you already know, so you already know what the price. She's selling her shirts for $5. That's an awful cheap t-shirt. And this is also your demand. It is also marginal revenue. It is also average revenue. Now, on the AP test, you're not going to be writing that. But what if they ask, like, in addition to price, what else does this line represent? Or why is it horizontal, right? And, you know, the price takers, the price is found on the market, or it's the price is perfectly elastic. Okay, so then marginal cost, increasing marginal returns, diminishing marginal returns. Right? And I know I'm throwing a lot of stuff that's not in this free response, but the more things that I can say that might stick with you guys, the better you're going to be. And it does say to show the quantity. So then it says shade total revenue. Well, think to yourself, total revenue equals, this is kind of an easy one, price times quantity. And when I introduce this in my class, I always say to kids, please someone tell me the difference between total revenue and profit. And, you know, you get those smart kids who raise their hand. They say things like total revenue is just the amount of money you've made, but you haven't subtracted your cost. What's left over is profit. Now that's a wise student there. So if it's price times quantity, price times quantity. So if you shade it correctly, right? And this, by the way, all right, that's what they mean for future reference, in case any of you are juniors and you take this again. Okay, or next year in college, if you get a 7:30 a.m. walking across the University of Arizona and you got to take a econ class, it would look like that. Then it says on C, assume consumers' demand for t-shirts increases. What will happen to the number of firms? Okay, so if you had a side-by-side graph here, right, and you have a normal market graph. Now, I'm not going to draw this out and give you a side-by-side graph, the whole 9 yards in this thing, because you guys are smart to figure this out. But let's say the price was found in the marketplace here. If demand increases, what does that mean? That means your price is going to increase. Now, if the price increases, and we already said this is a constant cost, so your average total cost is not going to change at all. And what's going to happen to the number of firms? Well, if price increases and your costs stay the same, that means you're earning profit. And anytime you're earning profit, what happens? Number of firms increases because due to higher profits being made. Okay. Another easy question for you guys. All right, let's move right along. We got 2 left today. Hopefully you are doing splendidly. Hopefully you guys are out there saying, I'm actually getting it. This is all making sense. That's what I'm really hopeful for you guys. Okay, here we go. Last 2. All right, this is a longer one, okay? So we're looking at perfect competition. We're looking at intervention and the different types of market structures. So assume profit maximizing firm in a perfectly competitive industry is earning economic profits. Okay, don't say, you know what, we don't have to draw. Look at, I realize that there's some drawing here, but look at C. C is, let's start discussing why these look the way they do. If you can draw these graphs, you are already a step ahead. Do not just blow the stuff off and say, well, we don't have to draw them. Drawing allows you to understand what you're drawing and why things look the way they do. So A, draw a correct graph. Okay, so it says for the typical firm and they're earning economic profit. So let's just go ahead and do this, okay? And then actually here, I'll read B too. Using the information, draw side-by-side graphs of the industry and the firm, given the existence, show how it's going to adjust in the long run and explain, and then show the price and output. Okay, so we can do this, right? We'll just do both these graphs together. All right, here we go. Hopefully, actually, you know what? That looks worse. We'll do that. Okay, so for the firm graph, showing profit, price, make sure it's a horizontal line. Demand equals marginal revenue equals average revenue. If you had to draw this, marginal cost, quantity, and it said they are currently earning economic profit, average total cost. Stay on this line, go over, and it says shade completely, and there's our profit. Okay, so far so good. Easy stuff right there, right? You guys know that. You stay on this line. Next, side-by-side graphs of the industry or the market, and then the firm. So industry, the market looks like supply and demand. You have price and quantity. Okay, make your dotted lines over. So here's where we get our quantity in the market and the price in the marketplace. They are price takers. And then you have your marginal cost curve, and they're showing quantity down here. And it says this is a, okay, it doesn't say, so here's the thing, it doesn't say constant cost, increasing cost. On this one, go on the assumption it's a constant cost firm, even though it didn't say that. They just want you to understand that what's going to happen is if your average total cost is here, okay, so I'm literally drawing this graph is basically what I drew here. I'm not going to shade anything, it'll get in the way. Then we know what's going to happen. Firms enter markets. So how is that shown? Well, in the marketplace, if firms enter, there's going to be more of the product. So the firms are going to enter. So my new supply curve. What does that do? So it said to show the price, right? So my price is going to increase. My quantity is going to increase. So if on the AP test, they had this graph and they said things like, start explaining to us what's happened. You have to know what these graphs mean, right? Then you make your dotted lines over, and we know that you're going to be at 0 economic profit. So the price is going to fall and our quantity falls. for the firm. So the firm does not like competition, right? They have, and I would label this like D prime if you saw it labeled like this, okay? So now here we're at long run zero economic profit right there, okay? So firms are selling less at a lower price. Good news for those of us who are not the owners of the firm, we get more at a lower price out in the marketplace. All righty. And then assume the government sets a price that is less than equilibrium, but greater, and it says indicate. So let's go back to the free response so you guys can look at this. Okay. They set a price as less than equilibrium price, but greater than average variable. So ding, 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 you know they're going to stay open, losing money in the short run. Indicate how each of the following will change for the firm. Marginal revenue. Okay. So you would say, these are the great points where it's knowing these little nuances, knowing all the pieces of the graphs that you're drawing. So you would say marginal revenue will fall because marginal revenue is price, okay? And the government just set a price less. They're telling you they're setting a lower price in equilibrium. Level of output. Well, if price falls, that's your marginal revenue. So it will hit marginal cost at a lower quantity. So you would say the output will fall because MC equals MR at a lower quantity. So if you just drew that and showed price falling, right, on your marginal cost curve, that would make sense. And then short run total cost, well, this is where kids trip up and they start getting too like fancy for their own good. Common sense. My costs are based on typically how much I'm producing, correct? Right? The more I produce, the higher my cost. So my short run total cost, if my output falls, that means I'm producing less. If I'm producing less, what happens to my total cost? It falls. If they said why, okay, because I know they just say indicate. So remember, when you guys get to the test, indicate means increase, decrease type thing. Shift right, shift left. Explanation, right? When you see explain, you want those explanation points. So keep track of those. But if they typically will probably have mostly explaining points on these. And you would say the cost, short run total cost fall because output falls. And then short run total revenue. Once again, how do you get total revenue? Price times quantity. What did they say about the price? It fell, quantity fell, therefore total revenue must have fallen. And you would say because both price and quantity fell. Okay, all right, moving along. If you're still here with me, congratulations. You're sniffing for a 5 is what you're doing. I like it. So we got one more to do. Yes, it's a little bit of drawing, nothing too big. It's actually quite easy, but I just want to make sure you guys saw as many different things that could potentially be asked. So here we go, okay? Best Milk, a typical profit maximizing dairy farm is operating, okay, so here we are, constant cost, perfectly competitive industry that is in long run equilibrium. So you're gonna show what this looks like side-by-side graphs. All right, so let's oops. And then B says, assume milk is a normal good, consumers' income falls, and they continue to produce, show the effect of the decrease on income on both the market and the firm. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the graphing, and then C and D, we have to go back and we'll talk about those. Okay, so this is the one we're going to finish up with. I know it's a lot of graphing. Trust me, I went back through all of the free response, and there really aren't a lot of, actually when I say there aren't a lot, there's none, of perfectly competitive firm graphs already drawn where you discuss, unless it was cost curves. And I've shown you those either today or when we did perfect competition. So that's why we have to do a little bit of drawing. Monopolies, tomorrow, it's mostly, I'm going to show you graphs, and we're going to kind of break down the graphs tomorrow, okay, with imperfect competition. A little harder with perfect competition. So it says, best milk is constant cost, long run equilibrium, and it says side-by-side graphs. That's easy enough. We can do that right here. So once again, your supply and demand, your price and your quantity for the market. Make your dotted lines over. This is a price. This is your demand and marginal revenue. This is your marginal cost. So there's your output. Okay, and then it said they're in long run equilibrium, so your average total cost is right there. So you're making zero economic profit. So far, so good. Right? It's kind of a sloppy average total cost, but you get the drift. So we're right there. And then it says, assume milk is a normal good, consumers' income falls. Ooh, this goes back to when we talked about The reason for changes in demand, changes in income was number one thing that changed demand. What are we seeing right now in the United States, right? Demand for goods is falling. And why is that? Well, one of it is people are losing jobs and income is falling, right? Yes, I realize the other is because, we can't actually buy things. So it says on your graph, show the effect. Okay, so we know a decrease in demand is a demand shift to the left. And we also know that the quantity in the marketplace and the price falls. So if you want to see this in real life, right? And you look at the news and you see these people and they're on airplanes and they're like, why are you on an airplane? They're like, because I just found a round trip ticket for $39. So when demand falls, prices typically fall, right? Although the airlines are also supplying less flights. So some of the flights are actually more expensive now because there's so many less flights. I was supposed to be in Barcelona over spring break to see my son studying over in Barcelona, and we were going to go to Amsterdam, do the whole thing. And obviously we didn't. And looking for this summer, it's more expensive. And why is that? Because the flights to Amsterdam out of Detroit, let's say there were 5 before, maybe today there's only 1 or 2. And so what's happening is your supply shifts. So it's all these graphs. If you understand how to draw these, you can work your way through the newspaper, for goodness sakes. And if you don't know what that is, you know what I mean. So show the effect on for the firm. Okay, so look what's happening now. It's a constant cost, right? The cost isn't going to change. So here's your price found in the marketplace, meaning this is now the new price over here. And they are operating, so you know your average variable cost would be below, so we don't have to draw that. But then it says on here, the area of loss or profit. Well, here's your new quantity. First thing you need to do, always do your price and quantity. P1, Q1, okay, or P prime, Q prime. All right, so stay on this line and then go up to your average total cost and over, and this would be your losses now, because it's a constant cost firm. So there are your losses. All right, right there, because now you're at a new quantity. You stay up until you find average total cost and over. Okay, and then C says, following the decrease in consumer income, what must be true for them to continue? Well, price, this price here, average variable cost must be below at this price, right? Because if it was above, they would just shut down. And then D, assume the industry adjusts to a new long-run equilibrium. Compare the following between the initial and the new. Okay, the price. Well, if they're making losses, what's going to happen? Firms are going to exit. So some firms, when we say exit, what do we mean by this? Well, maybe they declare bankruptcy. Maybe they shut down, right? You're seeing this now. Harry and David, I think, was one of them I read today. There are certain firms that are saying, we're not coming back from this. We are actually closing, not temporary. We're closing for good. And if it's not Harry and David, my apologies. Something I read in the paper today, one of these firms. And so firms are leaving it. And how do we show that there's a decrease in supply? And guess what? There'll be a decrease in supply until price came right back to zero economic profit in the long run. So D1, the price in the industry returns to the original. Output, because this is a constant cost, as price shifts up due to so decrease in supply, price shifts up, and we're right back to the original quantity as well. And then D3 says the number of firms in the dairy industry. Well, we just said there's going to be exiting from this. Firms are going to exit that marketplace, so there would be less firms in the marketplace. Okay, so overall, let's look real quick. So that answers everything down here in D. Okay, so if you could, even without drawing this, if you could talk your way through this graph, then you're doing well. So to review really quick here, okay, we'll get you guys out here, right? Cost curves. You got to know the shapes of your cost curves. You have to know where they're labeled, things like that. All of these that you see, so anytime you see, right, any total product, total cost, total utility, you always want to throw on that marginal afterwards, okay? So when you see these production functions, things like this, you guys have to know that once you do that marginal, whatever column, then you can start answering the questions, okay? Boom, same thing below. All these tables, right? These cost functions, all these things, you have to know that you just throw your marginal on there. And then when we get to the perfectly competitive things, if you know what the graph for a perfectly competitive firm looks like, and you know what it looks like with, like, imagine if the question was written and it said something like, this is an increasing cost firm and they're making profit what would the new price be? And they listed a couple prices maybe in between. That would be a great question. You're not drawing, but you have to know what the graph means. So that's why I picked these today. Tomorrow, I think I have like 7 more. And then Friday, we'll get to, 5, 6, 7 more. And then remember some key things here. Your teachers should, or you guys might actually get these emails. You get a little form to fill out with your College Board number there, your AP number. And it tells you exactly what to bring, how to plan, make sure your electronics are all juiced up for that day and stuff like that. So you're going to want that. You're going to want to make sure that Monday and Wednesday of next week, you take those practice tests with us, because we're going to go over those Tuesday and Thursday. And Friday will be a final day of wrap up, and we'll see what that looks like. So as always, thank you very much for watching. To those of you who've reached out to me, really kind words. I'm glad these are helping you guys. I really hope that you do well in your exams. I'm rooting for all of you who've been watching these. Pull out the 5s. That'd be wonderful. So until tomorrow, stay healthy, stay safe, and take care of yourselves. And I will see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock for Unit 4 review. Take care.